This is the Baseball Fury podcast, hosted by Jimmy Flame.
You're tuned to the Big Game James Show on iHeartRadio. And now your host, Mr. Big Game James, Jimmy Flame.
What's up, everybody? This is your host, Jimmy Flame, for the Big Game James Show, the Baseball Fury. There's a lot going on in the world of baseball, and we're going to talk about all of it. Coming right up. Stay tuned. Some ideas of some show topics. The Orioles aren't doing so well, so I probably couldn't give you a very spirited show on the Orioles. Talk about the Nats all day if you want, but they've just been heartbreakers all year long since that first game. And then that first series with the Yankees, I was pretty excited, but they've been breaking my heart all year long, and Orioles don't do well. It's a little hard for you to get because I'm a big wuss like that. But alas, I found a topic I could cover in a very spirited manner. Across this Photoshop baseball card recently, and Macho Man Randy Savage playing for the Cincinnati Reds. Hilarious because the back of the card, those old Topps cards, and you can see bullet points and about the player on the back. And this one had some funny stuff on the back, such as Randy Poffo, which is his real name, would be able to make contact by dropping his elbow, which is hilarious because it has a double meaning. Ha ha ha. But anyhow, it gave me an idea. Gave me an idea to. For a show, to talk a little bit about the crossover appeal of baseball and wrestling. I want to discuss some of the forgotten characters, if you will. And I've also come up with a small list of current baseball players who would probably make good wrestling characters. So let's get right to it. Both baseball and professional wrestling has been part of the American identity since the late 1800s. They were both among the most popular programming with the advent of television. You can go back, some historians have argued that a one Gorgeous George, big-time professional wrestler in the 50s, 60s, had a lot to do with, or made a great impact on television sales themselves, in getting televisions into more homes in America, just because people wanted to see him wrestle on TV. That could be said about a number of other things, including baseball players or baseball teams. But Gorgeous George is often credited with selling televisions, not himself as a salesman, but just by wrestling in the ring and creating this character that people wanted to see on television. Both pro wrestling and baseball have had their steroid scandals, rather the steroid enhanced boom periods, which became scandals. And with these, all these similarities, plus much more, there's been a surprising lack of overlap between the two industries. Football, on the other hand, has countless crossover ability. The football players performing in pro wrestling, the number of them has been countless. The NFL Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2. I can think of Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow, Mongo McMichael and Kevin Green, two very good wrestlers from the the Ted Turner WCW days. Not to mention every great pro wrestler who began their careers after either a short career or a career in football. On basketball, we also have appearances by Dennis Rodman, Karl Malone, Big Daddy Shaq. They've all had matches on pay-per-view. I mean, we even had a character named the Goon cross-checking people out of the ring. And of course, there's a lot of examples of wrestlers throwing out first pitches. Recently, when he was Ring of Honor champ, Christopher Daniels threw a ball out in Chicago. I thought that was pretty cool, especially just for a Ring of Honor wrestler to do that. You've got your WCW. You've got your wrestling superstars accosting mascots. There's some examples of that, and there's plenty of examples of Major League ball players demonstrating their pro wrestling super fandom. But when baseball and wrestling actually collide in the ring, or in the wrestling arena, rather, that's when the magic is supposed to happen, right? Well, some would argue that it's the opposite of magic. So in honor of my O's doing so poorly and me not really wanting to talk specifically baseball, here are, for better or worse, some of the times that baseball and wrestling have intersected, mostly for worse. Mostly, I say. And it's funny because I lost track of I was supposed to have some crowd cheer there. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. There we go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You guys are fantastic. So everybody remembers Knuckleball Schwartz, right? There's a funny promo on YouTube. Just look up Knuckleball Schwartz discusses the baseball strike. You just got to see it. But anyhow, Steve Lombardi, most commonly known as the Brooklyn Brawler, had been wrestling for a long time by 1994. We're going back a little ways. The threat of a player strike in Major League Baseball loomed over the season that year, and in the summer, the World Wrestling Federation started airing promos about the arrival of a new wrestler named Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. And when the baseball strike finally did happen, Knuckleball, of course, made his debut. His gimmick, if you will, was that of a professional baseball player who now is unemployed, decided to come to the World Wrestling Federation to wrestle. And just in case you didn't know, he was a ball player. He wore a pinstripe baseball uniform and painted his face like a freaking baseball. It was a very much like a Halloween costume, like a 12-year-old's Halloween costume. and he would cut promos on the real problems of sports today. High salaries, not enough real men in the game, while also giving a relevant argument for not using public funds for building stadiums, which would probably get a pop these days. Back then, people was just like, "Oh, go back to baseball, whatever." And it's funny because everyone knew it was Steve Lombardi. But no one cares in the wrestling world, because when we watch this stuff or participate in this stuff, we suspend all reality and pretty much take what they give us. Or at least we're supposed to. So when the baseball strike ended, so did Knuckleball Schwartz's run as well. He was pretty much done. There was no more relevance. So jumping ahead to, let's see here, 1999. Baseball, of course, survived the strike and was doing better business than ever. A lot in part to the big home run boom. I could think back to like Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, how they battled over home runs and all that stuff before the later blah, blah, blah stuff happened. So WCW ended up introducing Dale Torberg, known as the most violent player. He was a former baseball player and the son of a former player and coach, Jeff Torberg. He was introduced as an ex-baseball player who came to World Championship Wrestling to wrestle as well. And as is tradition, he wore a baseball uniform with catcher shin guards. Still don't know why. And also painted his face with baseball stitching. And thankfully, he went with black and red face paint, so he looked like a really generic Kane. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, if it was a rib or what, but he pretty much pulled a Steve Lombardi. And the version, this version of Torberg only lasted for a few weeks before getting a makeover, before he got a makeover into an even worse face-painted gimmick as the Kiss Demon. You guys remember that guy, right? Well, that's who it is. He left wrestling altogether a few years later and went back to baseball as a strength and conditioning coach, never to be seen again in wrestling. Well, never to be seen again until this freaking guy, AJ Pierzynski. To a lot of beat writers and sports writers and maybe just people in general, not a very popular player. After the White Sox won the World Series in 2005, Pierzynski, along with White Sox strength coach, the Kiss Demon, who I just talked about, showed up on TNA's Impact to present the X Division with an honorary championship ring. This raised the ire of Simon Diamond, which led to a match at Turning Point where Pierzynski would manage Chris Sabin and against Diamonds in the Rough with another guy. Not to carry on with this, but the best thing to come out of this feud was the footage of Simon Diamond showing up to the White Sox training facility to call out Pierzynski, only to get laid out with a chair by Ozzie Guillen. And of course, Jim Tomei makes an appearance, and it was much to his delight. And that was a short-lived gimmick as well. And how can we talk baseball and wrestling without at least mentioning the Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, yeah. As an undrafted walk-on, Randy Poffo, Macho Man Daddy, hit over 300 in his first 3 seasons of rookie and low A ball as a catcher and an outfielder. He ended up injuring his throwing shoulder. So he taught himself to throw with his other arm, but it didn't work out so well because after his newly revived career throwing with another arm failed to take off, he ended up following in his father's footsteps and started his career in professional wrestling. Thank goodness for that. And also thank goodness no one thought to paint a baseball on his face. as I said before, you can look up this famous picture, Photoshopped picture, probably anywhere on the internet, of this supposed baseball card of Mr. Randy Poffo, talking about him having to drop his elbow to get better swings at the plate. So those are some notable crossovers that I found on and remembered as well on baseball players crossing over into wrestling. And this got me thinking as well, as World Wrestling Federation, World Championship Wrestling, other various wrestling promotions, of course WWE, all have a history of giving not failed. I can't really say failed, but I guess some were failed NFL players. You can't really call someone a failure if they've done it straight up. So I'm just going to call these next few people I'm going to mention NFL players, former NFL players, college standouts for sure. But WWE, WCW, all these pro wrestling promotions, past and present, have given a lot of these players a chance. Now, one guy that you may or may not know, he's an indie guy who is a good friend of mine, goes by the name Chongo Bronson, a buddy of mine. He's a former shoot fighter, MMA fighter, accomplished MMA fighter. He was actually ranked at one point. I can't remember by which governing body, but world ranked guy. Actually began his, I guess, sports career as a football player, playing for Colorado State, and then he went on and had very brief stints with, I believe, the San Diego Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. He's now back in wrestling. He has been for some time. He was wrestling out in Seattle for quite a while, but he's now in Colorado wrestling at Rocky Mountain Pro. I know that he's at that promotion because I see his friggin' promos and his videos all the time. He posts them on Facebook. And I support the guy 100%. Good friend of mine. He's a crossover football player / MMA guy / just all around physical specimen, great athlete who has chosen wrestling as the thing that he's going to do. Now, some wrestlers, some more famous wrestlers that you've definitely heard of, guys like Ron Simmons, Ahmed Johnson, Roman Reigns, Baron Corbin, Mojo Rawley. Did you guys hear any of that? I think my microphone came undone. But anywho, did it all get through? You think there's no way to check, so we're live anyway. So I apologize for the malfunction there. For some reason, the cord came out just dropped right out of the bottom of this freaking microphone. We got to get this fixed. So, I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. So, in terms of baseball and football, back to this, there are a couple of reasons that are obvious as to why NFL players have been used in professional wrestling over baseball players. The NFL players are just typically bigger, more imposing, especially in the ring, than, say, a traditional Major League Baseball player. NFL is a contact sport. Pro wrestling is a contact sport. The only contact that baseball players really make is bat and ball. So the players have experience on a football field. They're likely not to shy away from contact in a ring. Despite all of that, there's plenty of Major League Baseball players who have that look, I suppose, to be potential pro wrestlers. I mean, they already play on a diamond, and if you just surround it with ropes, it'd be a giant wrestling ring, right? So I scoured the internet and sort of gathered other opinions on this as well, and surprisingly found a few articles that did address this. Uprocks has an article. Of course, Bleacher Report, they have articles on anything you can think of. a blog called The Sportster. But anyhow, I've decided to kind of cherry pick the ones that stood out to me. And the first one being Jose Altuve. Why? Well, he kind of moves like Callisto. And both baseball and wrestling are similar in the fact that you don't have to be the biggest or the strongest to compete. In fact, Altuve is not just competing, as he is easily one of the front runners for the American League MVP again this year. He could be the first player since Mike Trout and Ryan Braun to do I'm going to say 40-40 season. Yeah, I know it's a lot, but this guy is a beast. Now, his comparison to Callisto, I think Callisto is actually listed at 5'6", which is the same height as the Astros' second baseman. Callisto has garnered success in both NXT and the WWE as a singles and doubles competitor. The King of Flight is trained in Mexico to maximize his skill en route to becoming one of the best high flyers today in professional wrestling. And it would be interesting to see how Altuve would fare in the cruiserweight division, given the type of athlete that he is. Now, here's a comparison that I thought was hilarious: Hunter Pence and Daniel Bryan. And you hear this all the time from analysts and fans, I guess, that Hunter Pence is the most unorthodox player in baseball. From the way he throws to the way he swings, the bat, everything essential to the game is done by Pence in such a manner that would not be taught. And despite this, he's a good player. But fans have grown to love the right fielder. At one point, people in attendance would bring signs to the game and read things like, "Hunter Pence eats pizza with a fork." Well, it's funny because I don't see that as odd at all, because that's exactly how I eat pizza usually as well. I call it the Maryland way. Anyhow, it's safe to say that his gimmick went over well with the fans, especially those in San Francisco who have taken a liking to him. And he's compared to Daniel Bryan, another guy who's considered untraditional in his field. Obviously, Daniel Bryan's not the biggest or the baddest guy around. He is still he's still over AF, you know what I'm saying? With the whole yes chant, I remember the no chant, like the whole thing. And I remember when he first came into, I guess I'll call it major wrestling, seeing him on television, he just looked like he should be there. Even though I knew him as an indie guy, he just looked like he should be there. He's still able to get the crowd behind him, despite the WWE pushing the product that they push. Through his performance, his personality, definitely his heart. And even though Pence and Daniels come from a similar mold, they probably would not get along very well. You see, Bryan has been quoted as saying that video games are for losers, a statement that Hunter Pence would definitely take great exception to. And another one. You know who reminds me of Finn Balor? Corey Seager. Yeah. I know. Oh, I guess you do know. But Corey Seager is having not only one of the best, or rather last season had one of the best seasons as a Dodger. Overall, he's been the best, one of the best hitters on the team. And I think he's been DL'd for a while. Actually, I think he's out for the year. Goes to show you how closely I've been following baseball as a whole. Because of my O's. Thank you, O's. But he's a darn good shortstop. A lot of people have compared him to Nomar Garciaparra, even Cal Ripken Jr. But the comparison comes from his success in a short amount of time. And Finn Balor had a lot of success in a very short amount of time. And like Seager, Balor spent a lot of time in the so-called minor leagues of wrestling, where he made a name for himself. before getting called up, and I'm using quote fingers. He was the first WWE Universal Champion after having wrestled his first match on Raw just a few weeks after popping up. And surprisingly, Seeger is actually a bigger guy than Baylor, listed at 6'4", 215. Baylor clocks in at just under 6 foot and 190 pounds. So there's that comparison. And we're going to go on to Jonas Cespedes. Does this guy remind you of The Rock or what? Both men are built like brick you-know-what houses. Cespedes might just be the most electrifying player in baseball, as The Rock continues to be the most electrifying player in sports entertainment. If Cespedes ever hit his opponent with a spine buster, his obvious follow-up would have to be the people's elbow. Or maybe a variation. How about the people's forearm? You know, the move where he takes the neon yellow armband off, throws it to the crowd, and runs across the ring before dropping the forearm across the opponent's neck, using it kind of as a baseball bat. When Cespedes hits one of those rockets, one of those missiles, one of those no-doubt home runs, he exudes the confidence and bravado of The Rock by flipping his bat and watching that ball fly over the fence. Of course, for the Mets outfielder to truly be the people's champ, he will certainly need to work on his mic skills, but those are things that can be taught. And worst case scenario, we can find him a manager. Perhaps Buck Showalter could make it in the wrestling business as a manager for Cespedes to be his mouthpiece. You know how Buck's got that really dry way of talking, but you hang on to all of his words? That's the mark of a guy who can get guys over who can't talk. So that's who I'm pulling for. Buck Showalter, manager of baseball, sports entertainment superstars. I'm going to talk about one more guy. Let's go Mike Trout and AJ Styles. Both guys are building themselves a nice legacy. And Trout, despite only making a single postseason appearance thus far with his time with the Angels, his combined stat that I hate the most, but it keeps popping up, WAR. What the hell is WAR? A side note to that, it's a statistic that hasn't been agreed upon by anyone. So why do we continue to use it? Anyhow, who cares? But anyhow, I'm just going to get off that whole WAR subject because I'm going to get really pissed off and get off topic and blah, blah, blah. I tend to do that sometimes. So, anyhow, the comparisons. AJ Styles is obviously in the middle of creating a nice legacy for himself. The phenomenal one is well-traveled, beginning his humble career down there in the woods of Georgia. I don't know if it's the woods of Georgia, but the arena where he cut his teeth is still there, and I can't wait to wrestle there one day. I was booked there a while back, but something happened with travel and yada yada. I didn't make it. By the way, I'm going to be in Georgia at the end of this month, May 25th, I believe. Put myself over here, of course. Who would I compare myself to in terms of a baseball player? Anyhow, I'll ask that question again in a few minutes. You can respond on Facebook, JimmyFlame77, or on Twitter at JimmyFlame77. See what I did there? So AJ Styles is making himself a legacy. Mike Trout's making himself a legacy. For some reason, when I kind of put the two to get side by side, it makes sense. AJ Styles is still not very deep into his WWE career, but he's very much an established guy. Very impressive, including defeats over John Cena at SummerSlam, multiple headlining appearances, main events. He's a main event guy, that's for sure. His move to the WWE was an obvious choice as the contracts are more lucrative, and he also gets more exposure to a mainstream audience. Now, only if Trout could find something similar on his way to a contending team so we can truly witness his greatness. Mike Trout and AJ Styles, ladies and gentlemen, running concomitant careers. And that's your word of the day, concomitant. What does it mean? It's kind of like conflate or similar or something like that. I always like trying to use those big words, you know. Make them a habit, make you seem smarter than you really are. Speaking of... did I just burp in the mic? How disgusting of me. Concomitantly, I burp in the mic and call myself disgusting. There's your example, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it. Baseball, sports entertainment, or pro wrestling, whatever the hell you want to call it. Big time crossover. Got any questions or comments? Oh, I didn't even get to the chat today. I'm sorry. I'm looking over here at some question. Yeah, sorry, guys, gals. I'm not going to make it to the chat today. I'll have to answer these on Facebook or with Twitter. And you can give me a follow over here at Facebook. I have a couple of pages on Facebook, actually. My Jimmy Flame Persona page, which is it's dubbed a musician's site or whatever you call it. And then I have my personal page at Jimmy Flame 77. Just, I don't know what you're going to follow me there. I'm a pretty funny guy, I think. Plus, that's where I post all my wrestling matches and radio appearances, and television stuff, and blah, blah, blah. Even those awful YouTube videos where I'm wrestling in front of 15 people, you can go there and troll me if you like. I don't care. But until next time, as usual, this is Jimmy Flame for the Big Game James Show, the Baseball Fury on iHeartRadio, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple Music, Google Play, everywhere in the world. It's a fun show, don't you think? I think so. Until next time, I'm going to spend a while trying to think about something to talk about that doesn't get me down. So, if you have any ideas for a show, give me a call. No, I'm not giving out my phone. Just do that. Just contact me through Facebook. Once again, at Jimmy Flame 77. Or on Twitter, at Jimmy Flame 77 as well. Visit my website, JimmyFlame77.com. You can download my music, check out my music. You can purchase my music. Also check me out on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, all major retailers, outlets, etc. Get a man a hookup. But until next time, this is Jimmy Flame. I'm signing out. Have a wonderful day. Ooh, yeah.